You ever have one of them days, man, where you just want to get cozy and, you don't know why you're so uncomfortable, man, and you sit down, you give up, man, you don't know what's going on, and then your wife walks in the room and she hands you your favorite pair of sweats right out the dryer. I mean, right out the dryer. You put them on and you say, today's going to be a special day. Today's going to be a special day, man. Fair use in your caboose ball. You know when I knew it was going to be a special day, man? When Miss D dropped this joint, man. And love again to Miss D. Love to the family. Love to Tabu Coco. Love to the family, man. Yeah, she brought up this doc. And it got me excited. I want to play a little bit back for you, man. Love to Miss D. Subscribe for the drop. The sister's digging in. And she dropped a jewel, man. She dropped a jewel. Love to the sis. Dropped a jewel. You give it, then you keep giving it. You keep on giving it. Now check this out.
I brought this up in a couple of videos before. I'm trying to find a PDF. I haven't been able to find it, but the medieval empire of the Israelites is really something for us to look into. 3 Indias, it really is.
Really is. That's all she had to say. Love to you, sis. That's all you had to say was that it was worth looking into, and you did drop it before, and sometimes you got to repeat these things, for all of us, because, we got so much going, in and out, different things, different ways. We got to be centered, man. But I looked it up, just did a quick search on it. The medieval empire of the Israelites. And you see already this thing used is worth, you got to put up over 500 used. Now, you automatically, you said, man. I mean, I know it ain't 250,000, $1 trillion, but it's enough to discourage you from buying the book when you don't really know the value, you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, you ready to get a book for $20, $30, then a paperback $500 book. And look, it's temporarily out of stock. So you couldn't get it if you wanted to. But there's more choices. You can get it used from $896 and up. Or 2 new for $500. Hey, look, you get your deal. I definitely want to get my hands on a copy of this joint. It's out of stock right now. I don't know. Maybe I gotta put up $900 to get a copy. But the sister brought it up. She brought up the 3 Indias, and I've seen these type of clover type of maps before, and typically they stand for Africa, Asia, Europe, that type of thing. But everything's in the symbolisms. Then I looked on YouTube, and this brother over here had some drop on it, and I said, well, let's check out some of this drop, man. This is. Apparently he had a book. Here's a lot of drop. Go check out Each One Reach 41. Each One Reach 41. And yeah, let's check out a few minutes when he's going to drop this same document that the sister D was just dropping. Let's check this out.
Answer this once for all and give all the information and the truth on the Israelites that ruled Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So the name of this book is The Medieval Empire of the Israelites. Here's the author. Now I'm making this video, even though I made a couple other ones, and the brother History of the Chosen made some.
I'm going to do a belly fly.
Ireland and all over the place. Build statues of themselves, make paintings of themselves just for the heck of it. Run back over to Africa, sit here and be waiting to be picked up by Edomites to come to America for slavery. Or the truth had to go on, and that was this. We overthrew your behinds, whooped y'all behinds, and put you in servitude and in slavery, and we ruled Europe for almost 700 years. Period. Or else, why would you, and I'm going to show all the proof from all the European cathedrals and all the lands in Europe, Italy, Switzerland, all over the place. Why are all these black statues there if we were never in Europe? And if we never ruled Europe, are you saying that Edomites, which we knew Edomites did rule parts of Europe, rule Europe for a part time. Of course, we were slaves under you. Of course, that was slavery in the 1600s wasn't the first time. Rome was. You understand? Rome was. So I'm gonna prove.
All right, I'm gonna belly flap a little bit. I want to get to some of the stuff he's dropping in the book. He's going in, but obviously we have a comprehension as well. That it's not just a white Edomite thing. We know that these are the melanated Edomites we're talking about. These are the melanated Moabites we're talking about. All right, so when we talk about this rulership in Europe, you know what I'm saying, we have these Moors against these Moors in Europe, both having two perceptions of what greatness is, and one is having the greater light, and one is having another light that they're calling great underneath the barrier. All right, so you have these Jacobite uprisings with these different tribes, these different melanated tribes. You have these Scottish Highland tribes. Then you have, these Moor Islam sultans and all this other stuff. All right, so you got the Ishmaelites, you got the Confederacy going on. So all this stuff was melanated. So, all the stuff we see that's melanated ain't necessarily Hebrew, or that ain't necessarily these tribes of Jacob. We know that all these tribes were rocking, throughout this time, especially in Spain. Especially in what's called Europe and Asia and all that kind of stuff. So, let's see. He's gonna get to some of this.
They know the children of Israel are black people. Again, over here, they were so upset because it was so much paintings and sculptures and things that we put and left down there. They didn't know what to do with themselves. And the Catholic Church is the main funder of all this. And back in the day, they had Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo go down there and deface most of those paintings also, which they called back then whitewashing. And I'm going to prove it by showing some icons that were whitewashed. But they're going to be pictures of black people in Europe, but they were whitewashed. And look, they would bring out documents. These Edomites would bring out documents, and then they would find that they were all forgeries. So what they try to do is take the history, rewrite it, and take our history, put it in under wraps, keep it quiet, and put a fake history out. That's why you have all these Edomites like this fool on YouTube thinking that she knows what she's talking about, but she really doesn't.
He's going in. All right, but pay attention. You just said they're putting history on top of each other. We got the chronology. We got the flamenco. We'll be back in that series, Ancient Knowledge and True Chronology. But check it. We're going to get some chronology today. Love to the sister, Miss D, because we got some of that. And after this, man, I really got real excited, man, to find this particular joint. I know she said she was looking for the PDF. She said she was looking for it. And, man, I locked myself in a room. I said, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat until I find this PDF. And, man, after I almost gave up, bang. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Man. Let the Paco, y'all go check out Paco. He just had a wonderful session. Wonderful, wonderful vibration session for you, man. Love to you, brother. Love to the fam. Love to the tribe. Go. All right, so table of contents, man. The mysterious prevalence of Judaism. Failures of the modern chronology. Now, this particular text jives shoulder to shoulder with Federico Anatoli, the Russian chronographer, that's telling you about your timelines. The Russian chronology telling you about your timelines, and just so we comprehend what Federico's saying. Here are a few of researchers that were researching Federico, because we're about to get into some interesting stuff, and I just want those that have not caught anything to catch 2 minutes of this. Because we're just talking about the timeline. So we're saying what happened in the so-called Dark Ages. What happened in the so-called Middle Ages. What happened when we hear these Prester Johns popping up 300 years apart? What happened when we say that this Babylonian and Assyrian captivity could have easily gone down in the 1200s? That the book of Daniel could have easily been written in the 12th century? It's not just us going crazy. So these folks in Russia went through with the astronomy, matching stuff up, and they realized that these people literally started layering historical events, kings, on top of each other, or dropping them off in the past 300 years apart. 1,000 years pushing it back, 1,800 years pushing it back, and it's the same king but a different name in a different place just to confuse you. Let's get a couple of minutes because these people are researching this chronology. Federico, let go.
Does, given one pair of duplicates, statistics. But his is what we might call one radical interpretation. Now, before you say this guy's out of his mind, what Flamenco does, given one pair of duplicates, what Flamenco does is says, well, can we establish astronomically which one is valid? So, take, for example, Thucydides' Peloponnesian Wars. There are 3 eclipses mentioned in the Peloponnesian Wars. They're described with great fullness. There's a lunar eclipse, an annular solar eclipse, and another lunar eclipse. You can infer what the path of totality was, and the whole deal from these descriptions. The creators of modern chronology, namely Scaliger and Batavius, tried to astronomically solve the problem of those eclipses, were not able to do it without leaving out some of the data provided by Thucydides, who, by the way, says he was a witness of this. So what Flamenco did, he said, let's make no presuppositions about this. Where are the exact astronomical solutions for this triad of eclipses? And there turns out to be one in the 11th century AD and one in the 12th century AD, and no others. So what Flamenco does quite regularly is he will appeal to astronomical arguments to try to determine which is the principal one, and his conclusion, and however crazy it may sound, is extraordinarily well argued, is that the only legitimate history is the modern history from about 300 on, and most of that, by the way, is from 900 on.
So the only legitimate history, according to this methodology, and go and get the True Chronology series, because we went deep into that for hours into Federico, Anatoly. Alright. After the 900s, after the 300s, mostly after the 900s is when the legitimate history. So when you talk about most of your legitimate, what you're calling history that's been taught to you, happened after the 900s. Are we crazy to say, let's have an hypothesis here? Did all this just happen, and just to disconnect us, they pushed it back to the BCs and pushed it back to times that seemed so long ago, so that your Israelite behind would not connect to the fact that your Israelite kingdom was just taken down recently, damn near in the last 200 years? These people ain't just doing this for you. They're trying to really, there's never been a true chronology that's actually been laid out there, man. Everyone's been doing it for their own purpose. Whoever's been providing you with your time and your law's been doing it for their own benefit. And once in a while you have independent cats come along and say, look, we need to stack this stuff up correctly. And of course, it's the Minority Report. It's the Federico Report. But you have to, surf the wave and say, what jives, man? What jives inside? Because you're going to know the truth. It's going to hit you inside. Don't think about it. Just feel it. Hear this again and feel it.
Is the modern history from about 300 on, and most of that, by the way, is from 900 on. From 300 on, we got statuary documents and things like that.
He thinks most of the things that we think of as historical events really did happen, but the question is when and where.
When?
Maybe, of course, how many times. And he thinks, well, it didn't happen 10 times, it only happened once.
What?
And most of that stuff happened after 900.
Yeah, by the way, and
most of that stuff happened after the 900s that you consider history. And this is the work of Federico. You dig it? We're going to get into it, man. Love to Miss D in the Copper Color Awakening. Again, love to you, sister. This was an incredible document, that she told us to dig on. So, love to you. These are the things that we all need to be dropping, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to drop a chapter here and there. But everyone needs to get into this joint, man, and just dig on it. You know what I'm saying? Because, these are the ones that cost $1,000 just to order. You know what I mean? So this is the stuff you are not supposed to be looking at. Now, I never went on the deep web or dark web or nothing like that. But, we're scraping that surface, finding stuff like this, man. So, Hawa, the books are being unsealed. So I want to get into this Mongol yoke, but before that, we're going to get into some of this chronology. Now, I want to get into this one first. It's going to have a great foundation, but I'm a little crazy. So I'm going to belly flop into chapter 3, the verification of history with algebra. And then we'll see where we go from there, man. I'm just really excited to have it up. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't. I almost gave up, man. I said, man, I don't think this is going to happen. Oh, man. I mean, they got pictures. I wish we had the colors, you know what I'm saying? I wish we had it in color. I guess you got to pay for the colors, for the ink. But it's all right, man. I think we know what time it is. So let's go. For the mango. Anatoly, what I tell you. For the mango's all over this thing. So, I mean, all praise the creator that we've been digging on flamenco, so we're familiar with flamenco. When we get it in some $1,000 document, they can't just flamenco us because he's just talking after 900. We just said happened after the 900 time frame, 900 to 1600. Very important, people. Who's ruling your times and laws? For the mango told you that. Let's go. Man, don't you love how it just flows? Calm down, and let it go, let it flow. Man, put your guard down and surf the wave. We ain't trying to hurt nobody. I said I ain't trying to hurt nobody. The verification of history with algebra, chapter 3. Alright, let's get situated here. It's about to get good. A while ago. Aren't you excited, man? This is dope. I didn't think I'd get this $1,000 doc. Not to my sister, Miss D. But yeah, man, as you can see, it's gonna be a whole new series launching off of this joint. Because we're getting right back into the fundamentals and the chronology, alright? So, let's go. A true era in the critical comprehension of traditional chronology started comparatively recently. It is predicated. Alright. Love y'all. It's late, man. To all my night owls, everybody just up doing their thing. Love to y'all, man, for vibing with your boy, making me feel like I ain't that lonely. Alright, so a new era in the critical comprehension of traditional chronology started comparatively recently. It is predicated on the works of the world-renowned Russian mathematician and scientist Anatoly T. Fomenko, who has returned the study of chronology to the realm of the mathematical sciences. Together with teammates and followers both in Russia, Rus, and in US, Canada, and Germany, he has revealed the pattern of the drift of real history. Aren't you looking for reality? So Fomenko might help us get to reality. Let's follow the drift. Pattern of the drift of real history into the past and its interleaving into contrived epics, kingdoms, empires. Aren't you concerned about your kingdom and your empire? The new chronologists also have defined the root of the overhaul of the chronological system. The works of Fomenko and his followers allows us probably our only opportunity to determine when the empire of the Israeli monotheists, or the Israelite kingdom, or the empire of the Israelites really was, and what it really was. Therefore, we shall dwell on it in more detail. Anatoly Fomenko started with an examination of the ancient star catalogs. After all, many events which supposedly occurred in antiquity are dated based on them. A new method of dating the catalogs was developed, Then this method was used for dating Ptolemy's well-known catalog from his book Almagest. At this point, it became clear that Almagest most likely was compiled in the time frame 600 to 1300 AD and not in the 2nd century AD as the traditional history supposes. Ptolemy is generally regarded as not only the greatest but also the last astronomer of antiquity. After him, a darkness of something like more than 500 years is believed to have appeared in astronomy. Competence at observation fell to such an extent that in the 8th and 9th centuries, which separate Ptolemy from Albertinius, there were almost no observations which have any scientific value. This, in any event, is what the scientists ought to bear a summation of the situation in a short history of astronomy. So how does astronomy play? Well, you're talking about, you know what I'm saying, the Most High giving us these signs, right? We're just talking signs. Can these signs help us put our history back together again? Not their history, but our story. Then, interest in astronomy arose again with the Arabs as early as 8th to 9th centuries AD. They translated Almagest, built observatories, and made a multitude of observations. The earliest of the well-known Almagest manuscripts are dated approximately to the 9th century AD, the Arab translation. These are the positions of the traditional history. Not all agree with the lofty assessment of Almagest. In American astronomer Richard Newton's recent book, The Crime of Claudius Ptolemy, Ptolemy is proclaimed the most successful fraud in the history of science. Richard Newton made such a conclusion based on the analysis of numerical material which is contained in Almagest. The conclusion is brave and decisive, and one could be in agreement with it in many ways if Richard Newton at the same time had additionally cast doubt upon the Scaligerrian date of the composition of Almagest, but the author didn't go that far. New chronologists have chosen a second route. The essence of their work on Almagest amounts to the following. It is well known that some stars are shifting around the firmament. Among them are also well-known bright stars such as Arcturus. Since these are shifting over time, they change their coordinates. These changes provide the basis of an empirically verifiable dating method. We shall take a contemporary star catalog that fixes the positions of the stars seen in our era. We then shall examine any year in the past and find, with the aid of a computer, the precise values of the coordinates of the moving stars for this year. Such a calculation is made with great precision. Modern astronomy, modern astrometry, and the well-known values of the star movements themselves are used. Then we will compare the data received with the coordinates recorded in the catalog. Those years in which there are best agreements between the coordinates indicated are the most likely dates of the compilation of the catalog. And so the essence of the work lies in the comparison of the true coordinates and the coordinates of the stars from the Almagest catalog. The main difficulties lie here. What sort are they? The coordinates of the stars from Almagest will contain errors, and often they are extremely significant. The value of the catalog's division is 10 minutes of arc, but its real precision is lower. In order to get an idea whether it's great or small, let us say that some star cover such a distance in 350 to 400 years. So some stars cover such a distance in 350 to 400 years. Let's just roll with it. Thus, it is difficult to hope to get the date of the catalog's compilation with the precision of up to 100 or even 200 years. In their research, the scientists took the catalog in the form in which it was cited in the fundamental work of Peters and Noble, and as a result of the calculations, they found that the interval of possible dating of the Almagest star catalog, as we have already said, is from 600 to 1300 years AD. It is shown that absolute latitudinal discrepancies of the Almagest named stars cannot be more than 10 minutes outside of this interval from the stated well-measured area of the sky. Before 200 AD, the maximum latitudinal discrepancy of the well-measured stars cannot be less than 35 minutes of arc, which makes the hypothesis of the compilation of the catalog in an era earlier than 200 AD inconceivable. The dating method was tested on several reliably dated medieval catalogs, and also on a number of artificially compiled star catalogs. The effectiveness of the method is supported fully. The data received with its help practically coincided with the reliability known dates of the compilation of the indicated catalogs. Almagest has some strange features. The first star of the catalog is Polaris, but the position of Polaris in it is incongruous with the astronomical situation in the 2nd century AD. After all, there was a second star at the pole then. Interesting. There's another star there. Everything coincides well in that case if the observations occurred in the 10th to 16th centuries AD. Included in the catalog is the star Achernar, admittedly not visible in Alexandria, where, according to traditional history, Almagest was compiled in the 2nd history AD, but in the 15th, 16th centuries, Achernar already was visible. Durer's drawings of the constellation star maps are used in Almagest, but they were engraved only in 1515. Either of these facts can be explained independently, but taken together, they point to the fact that most likely Almagest is a book that was written in the 10th to 16th centuries AD. Chronology, astronomical methods in chronology, Ptolemy's Almagest, Tycho Brahe, Copernicus. Another investigation is connected with the new star, which flared up in the east according to the gospel and church tradition. Okay, listen up. In the year of Christ's birth. Listen up. Then, after 31 years, in the year of the resurrection, a full solar eclipse took place. Church sources speak clearly, in particular, about the solar eclipse in connection with Christ's resurrection. We shall note that the solar eclipse in Palestine, and what is more, a full solar eclipse, is an exceptionally rare event. Solar eclipses happen every year, but these are generally visible only in the narrow strip of the lunar shadow's trajectory over the earth. This in comparison with the lunar eclipse, which are visible all at once from half the territory of the so-called globe. Biblical knowledge of the 18th to 19th centuries did not reveal naturally the gospel solar eclipse in the Palestine of the start of our era. Then the solar eclipse was recast into a lunar. All the same, true, it did not help because they also didn't find a lunar eclipse which approached it precisely. Therefore, they simply ceased talking about the problem. What then was discovered? It turns out such a pair of rarest astronomical events, the flare-up of a new star, and 31 years later a full solar eclipse in the Mediterranean, really did take place, but only in the 11th century AD. So if you do your digging astronomically, you get on this, this trajectory situation, get these comparisons, get these eclipses, you're turning out that the only time that this flare-up of a new star and 31 years later, a full solar eclipse happened, according to how this, gospel is being written out, the only time it happened was in the 11th century. 11th century. Now, who is it referred to in the 11th century? Do you understand your takedown was recent? I just said, what if the book of Daniel was written in the 12th century? And now you have this sign of this Meshy sign happening when? In the 10th century. So in the 1000s, this is well-known flare-up of a new star. In 1054, and the full solar eclipse of 16, something's cut off, February the 16th of February, 1086. The shadow of the solar eclipse passed through Italy and the Byzantine. And what's going on with this Mazzaka? What's going on with that Romani Empire? Shoot, what's going on with Moses? What's going on with Joshua? All that's in play. We're just talking this, Anasazi and Aztec and Udall Aztec. It is both interesting and significant that references to Christ in the medieval chronicles of the 11th century have come down to us unaltered. For example, in the chronography of 1680, it is reported that Christ himself visited Pope Leo. So they got documentation that Christ himself visited Pope Leo. This is going to be good. It is related how Christ, in the form of a beggar, visited Leo the Ninth in his bedroom. As Anatoly Fomenko discovered, there are parallels with the gospel in the biography of Pope Gregory VII, who died 1085. Right? Anatoly Fomenko also showed that in many chronicles, the year 1054 AD, the so-called fundamental shift of 1053 years in the chronology. Remember, they said they shifted one. So they took a story of one king, and they would change the name of the king and put it in a different place in a different time. But they did it in shifts, so they would shift it back 333 years. Then, 1053. Then again, they would do it, I think, 18 something. All right, so it's 1800. Then you had that 1100 or so, or 1000, and then the 300-year shift. And this is what he's referring to. Anatoly Fomenko also showed that in many chronicles, the year 1054, the so-called fundamental shift of 1053 years in the chronology, is implied as year 1, in accordance with Christ's birth, in quotation mark. This means that the medieval chroniclers often dated the birth of Christ precisely to 1054. Now, I just want you to meditate on the implications of this particular, this particular image here, this particular Krishna being born in 1054. This hell Zeus being born in 1054. Or is it based on a foundational legend of an actual Mashiach, not the son of the creator to come through, the creator to have to come through this son to get to the... Nah, I mean, you're talking about what? A prophet was born? A sign was born? A messenger was born? All these things are implications. But it's 1054. 1054. What they say, Genghis Khan, came and overtook Prester John in what, 1203? And their implication, based on this chronology, fundamental shifts 1053, Anatoly Fomenko, is that the Mashiach, a messenger, was born in 1054. Prester John said he took 6 baths in the fountain of youth, every time turning him back to 32. That's the real meaning of a baptism, being put in real living water and turning back to 32 again. That's living water. That's not sprinkling water on, dumping in the ocean. That's the fountain of youth. So all this has to play. It's not mythology. It's not mythos. 1054. Meditate on it. I mean, nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about the implications. Nobody wants to talk about the implications. Man, let me get my mood music. Wow. So we're just talking about the implications, my people. We're just meditating on reality, my people. We're just getting cozy in our secluded alcove, my people. Anatoly Fomenko also showed that in many chronicles, the year 1054 AD is implied as year 1. So they put it as 1054 when they mean year 1. So then what's year 1? I'll wait. If the birth of their Christos is 1054, then what's year 1? And why are we reading about this, Kalalos American empire being reconquered in the 700s? And all this stuff going down here, and what's happening in the 600s and 700s, and all this stuff happening here, and what's going on in the 900s. See, this is the history that was really taken, man. The history from the 300s to the 900s. That's what we're piecing back together again. This up to 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. Major work. And what really happened only a couple hundred years ago? Incidentally, the start of the First Crusade for the liberation of the Holy Sepulchre is dated 1096. On the other hand, medieval church sources, the story of the Savior's Passion, Pilate's letter to Tiberius, which describes the events connected with Christ in greater detail than do the Gospels, maintain that immediately after Christ's resurrection, Pilate was called to Rome and there put to death, and that Caesar's army was sent to Jerusalem where it captured him. Today, such assertions are considered medieval conjectures, inasmuch as nothing is mentioned in Scaliger's chronology about any Roman campaign to Jerusalem in the 30s of the 1st century AD. However, if Christ's resurrection is dated at the end of the 11th century, this assertion by the medieval sources takes on solid literal sense, i.e., Christ's resurrection happened in conjunction with the First Crusade, during which Jerusalem was taken. Christ's resurrection happened in conjunction with the First Crusade, during which Jerusalem was taken. Just think about when Jerusalem was taken and where it was taken. And we're only talking the 11th century. Let's go. The picture that emerges from this, as discovered by the scientist and his followers, is that practically all of the story, which is attributed to dates earlier than 900, consists of duplicates. Which is attributed to dates earlier than 900. So all of the story having to do with this Christus, which is attributed to dates earlier than 900 AD, consists of duplicates. The originals of which are found in the time frame 900 to 1600. So we really start reconning who was actually crucified in 1054 and 1053, and start narrowing down these particular, messengers that were crucified, and you might get the actual foundational legend of this Christus. The actual Messiah, not some, straight up go through me to get through your father, to get to your father. And that's the big difference when we say hijack. Anything that says come through me, and I am this, and you will have to come through me, and this and that. That's all what's being brought to you here because you were not rocking like that. Your issue was choosing another power instead of your power. Thinking like them, thinking like the hijacks, the melanated hijacks that we're talking about right here. And who was crucified in 1054? Or what they say, crucified or resurrected? Let's go back. This means that medieval chroniclers often dated the birth precise. So who was born in 1054? Alright. I guess 30 years past that would be 1080, you know what I mean? So in the 1080s, where did you get that? (1096), the Holy Sky. So I don't know when they're dating his death, but they're talking about the resurrection maintained immediately after Christ's resurrection, or this messenger's resurrection. Pilate was called to Rome and there put to death. Alright. So today such assertions are considered medieval conjectures. Let's get it. So we got everything happening earlier than the 900s consists of duplicates, the originals of which are found in the time frame 900 to 1600. In particular, each event described in the contemporary textbook as having happened earlier than the 900 AD is a concatenation of several later events. Concatenation. I haven't seen that one yet. Let's put that in. Let's just dig on that. Because I want to get this clear with you. Concatenation, etymology, 1600s, Latin, a linking together, noun of action from past participle stem, to link together, with together, linking together in a chain. So they're linking these things together in a chain. Is a linking together of several later events. So everything that happened earlier than 900s AD is a linking of several earlier events, of several later events, excuse me. So a linking of several later events. So you're thinking they're happening back then, but they're actually just a link or a chain of the later events that happened between 900s and the 1600s. And when was your takedown? When was this papal bull? 1452, subjugating. Subjugating, they're calling pagans, and they're called heathen by you, and they're calling you pagans, and they're giving a royal decree from east to west to subjugate you. In 1452 into perpetual servitude, you were taken down during this time, right? Now do you see how the story is being matched up, and how the duplicates are being revealed, and how the books are being unsealed? Do you see the books being unsealed? The timelines being revealed? I mean, it all plays, man, when we talking 900s. It all plays when we talking about priest kings and Prester Johns and Calalus and Septimus Sylvanus, Sylvanus Tortexus, Solomon the Builder, all this stuff happening, man. So they're connecting in this link, the originals of which are found in the time frame of 900 to 1600 AD. In particular, each event described in the contemporary textbook as having happened earlier than 900 AD is a concatenation of several later events. Love to Miss D and the Copper Color Awakening. We are digging on this for you. In other words, it is a stratified chronicle, glued together from pieces relatively connected to each other, practically identical among themselves. So he went deeper into the concatenation. We got linking together a chain of events, but he said, man, anything before the 900s is a stratified chronicle, glued together from pieces relatively connected to each other, practically identical among themselves, duplicates. Anatoly Fomenko performed a simple, at first glance, investigation. If one takes the biography of any person and writes down the dates of the primary event of his life, taking the date of birth as 0, then a definite series of dates will result. Let us assume 0 birth, 12 serious illness, 22 marriage, 27 a war, 29 birth of a son, and here, and so on. The resulting series has an interesting property, a specificity, provided that one has rather large number of dates. The probability of the concurrence of any two individual biographies is practically nil. What then was the result when they entered the dynastic data of many royal families, both of Europe and Asia, into a computer? The results were stunning. The biographies coincided when it was a question of rulers who lived earlier than 17th century. After the 17th century, there was no coincidence. So they're getting the duplicates before the 16th century, but not after the 16th century. So really, a lot of this real history happened after the 16th century, 15th century. That's when there was no coincidences. But even before the 16th century, there was still some coincidences, still some duplicates. So you're not all clear because you get it past the thousands or past the 1100s. Fomenko and his colleagues again and again checked the method and the conclusions, but there were no errors. For example, the biographies of all the Chinese emperors earlier than 17th century duplicate with inconceivable precision the biographies of medieval European rulers. The biographies of Chinese emperors, open your ears, open your hearts. The biographies of all the Chinese emperors earlier than the 17th century or 1600s duplicate with inconceivable precision the biographies of medieval European rulers. Besides the duplication of the very same heroes under various names, gigantic shifts in times of the events described have been detected. Among the most significant examples are the numerous coincidences of the numerical characteristics of the biographies of the Egyptian pharaohs, Egyptian Nessuts, and the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire. So there's correlation between the Egyptian pharaohs, the Nessuts, and the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire? That sounds crazy. Oh, we do this for crazy. We woke up for crazy. Among the most significant examples are the numerous coincidences or duplicates of the numerical characteristics of the biographies. So we're going to put their stuff, in the computer, line them all up. Look at the numerical characteristics of the the Egyptian pharaohs and the emperors of Holy Roman Empire. Check it out. They analyze on the computer the writings of the Roman historian Josephus Flavius, Piso, some call him Paul. One of the classic sources, the works of whom describe solid periods of history, both of Israel and of ancient Rome. With what result? The implacable computer showed that it is simply a retelling of the Old Testament. So the computer showed that it is simply a retelling of the Old Testament, with these writings of Roman historian Flavius Josephus is just based on the computer a retelling of the Old Testament with the manipulation of names and geographical events. This is mind blasting. In other words, the Old Testament was borrowed from Flavius. The only difference is that the Old Testament is talking about the Judaic kings and Flavius is writing about the Roman emperors. This doesn't change the facts of the matter as the biographies coincide. The cardinal conclusions made by Fomenko and his colleagues have been met with furious criticism. Tradition historians reject them both as a whole and in part. However, there still are yet to appear arguments in any critical article capable of refuting the mathematical and astronomical part of the works of the new chronologies. It is useless to argue with mathematics. This being the case, the rejections reduced to it cannot be that so many learned men of the past were so mistaken. We must not deprive mankind of its history, and there are methods somewhere which refute Fomenko. Somewhere. So what is he saying? I mean, when he says that the Old Testament, retelling of the Old Testament with the manipulation of names and geographical events. In other words, the Old Testament was borrowed from Flavius. Is he literally saying that Flavius created the Old Testament? Or is he literally saying that Flavius, wrote in such coincidental, with such coincidental detail that there were many coincidences? So we don't necessarily have to take that road of, Flavius created the New Testament. Not when we see the parallels of what they, these people brought all this stuff together. They truly did synchronize. The Papal, the Mayan cliches, all that drop, and Flavius, penned a lot of things. Now, we a lot of times think about Flavius in the New Testament, not so much Flavius in the Old Testament, but we know that these people are manipulating the old and the so-called new. That's why it's called old and it's called new. If it's being presented to you as the Old Testament, it's because someone did a remix on you and is giving you something that is being cut off and then started up with a new energy, a new hijack, a new, deity for you to call God and Zeus. So we're just putting this stuff in play. Don't rush to no conclusions. No one's saying Flavius invented the whole Old Testament. I mean, maybe they're saying astronomically, it appears the Old Testament was borrowed from Flavius. Or maybe certain elements that are the duplicates were borrowed from Flavius. And certain elements of the Torah, they're talking Torah, they're talking Tanakh, So let's keep reading before we draw a conclusion. Surfing away. All right, except the Old Testament is talking about Judaic kings and Flavius is writing about Roman emperors. Now, the interesting thing is that when you compare the Roman Empire, like, the original Roma Empire, before it was moved to the Vatican, when it was still in Mazaka and Mosak, what they now call Khazari, or Constantinople, or all those other things later. But it was Mosak, it was Mosak. You remember in Josephus, he says, so was the entire nation once called. So was the entire nation once called. And again, love to the sister Miss D in the Copper Color Awakening, She was breaking down, Meshi and the Mexican, and how these Mexican-American wars were going on, and how we were this Meshi. We were this Moses. We were this mixed multitude, And just Josephus straight up tells you that Mosak, and in it is a sign, and so was the entire nation was called. And you look up and you see Mosak and Moscow, all named after Moses, and the Rus. And we're going to get into the Ruses. We're going to get into the Ruses, man. When it comes to these Mongols, and all this connection to these Khans and the Wang Khans and the Cariots. But all that stuff is connected, man. Now we're connecting these timelines and, you know, trying to see how all this stuff is playing. But it's a really interesting wave that we're on, left to sister. It's D, man. And, yeah, you know, was the entire nation basically named Moses in different languages? Mexico, Mexica, Mashkal over there. And when you deal with Pressure John of the Three Indies, you're dealing with a common theme, a common Israelite kinship connected to all the drop, the fountain of youth, the Garden of Eden. All right, so what chronologies are we playing with? Does it have to be in BCs, or did it just go down? Did all this just go down when we talk about Judaic kings and all this stuff? Are we talking Byzantine? Are we talking the Kremlin? Are we talking Moscow Kremlin? When did this go down for real, for real? You thinking, you know, are we talking, what are we talking? We're talking Rus, we're talking America, we're talking Kalelus. All right, let's keep going. The cardinal conclusions made by Flamenco and his colleagues have been met with furious criticism. Traditional histories reject them as both in whole. So we got that. It is worth dwelling especially on the final argument, the question of methods developed both comparatively long ago and altogether recently, both times receiving widespread publicity. This has been the case, in particular with respect to the archaeological dating of source and monuments. For example, in Egypt in the 1890 dynasties, Greek vessels of the Mycenaean culture are discovered in graves. Greek vessels of the Mycenaean culture are discovered in graves. For this reason, they are considered by archaeologists to have been contemporary with each other, Egypt and Greece, and the Mycenaean culture. It is not possible to regard them in any other way. Later, they find these same or closely similar vessels along with the special type of fasteners used by Mycenae in Germany. So we gotta dig on this Mycenae. Alongside urns. A similar urn was found near Fangr, and in this urn it is also found a new type of pen. A similar pen is found in Sweden in the barrow of King Bjorn. As a result, this burial mound was dated to the time of the 18th to 19th Egyptian dynasty. But at the same time, it was discovered that Bjorn's burial mound could in no way be correlated with the king of the Vikings, Bjorn. It had to have been constructed a good 2,000 years earlier. It is not clear here what to understand from such similarities or discoveries. Some may say that the objects are similar, but others will deny this, and he who is closer to the truth would not win the argument, but he who has the weightier authority in the scientific world, that is, the procedure, will rest on undivided subjectivism and successful appeal to previously established authorities. Can one honestly call this scientific? In our opinion, no, especially since, again, the objects found are being compared with similar discoveries dated earlier in order to accord with the Scalingerian tradition, right? The whole Scalinger. Right? The excavations of Pompeii are a striking example of the problems which arise in the dating of the archaeological material. The 15th century author Jacopo Sannazaro wrote, "We were approaching the city Pompeii and its towers, homes, theaters, and temples, untouched by the centuries, already were visible." This is in the 15th century. But Pompeii is considered destroyed and covered by the eruption of 79 AD. Yet the excavations of Pompeii are a striking example. The 15th century author Jacopo Sannazaro wrote, "We were approaching the city Pompeii and its towers, homes, theaters, temples, untouched by the centuries, already were visible." Is it too much to explain anything? Archaeologists are forced to assess Sannazaro's words thus. In the 15th century, some of Pompeii's buildings already stood out higher than the alluvium. In some, they include, as we see, both towers and homes and theaters and temples, in a word, the whole city. A fantastic picture is being formed. The thing is that there was never one case when ancient settlements buried beneath the earth would have appeared over time on the surface, then once more have gone beneath the alluvium. Such cannot be, but they reason so about Pompeii, the remains of which were stumbled across only in 1748 in particular. Otherwise, it would be necessary to change all dating. Excavations in Pompeii itself were performed barbarously. Archaeologists write, now it is difficult to determine the magnitude of the harm which resulted from the vandalism of that time. If a picture didn't seem beautiful to someone, they broke it into pieces and threw it away as rubbish. When they discovered some kind of marble table with a bronze inscription, they tore off individual letters and threw them into a basket. They fabricated souvenirs for tourists, for fragments of sculptures, not infrequently with pictures of saints. It is not ruled out that some of these supposed forgeries may have been originals, but only those were allowed to survive intact, which would fit into the Scaligerine chronology in 20th century. Archaeologists and historians drew attention to a strange process. The overwhelming majority of ancient monuments in the last 200-300 years that is starting from the moment when they began to keep an eye on them, somehow are being destroyed more fiercely and faster than in previous centuries and even millennia. Here's a typical article published in a Russian newspaper in October 1981. Sphinx in danger. The sculpture of the well-known Sphinx has been standing firm for almost 5,000 years in Giza. However, now the pollution of the surroundings has told upon its preservation. The Sphinx has found itself in a dangerous situation. A large piece of claw has broken off the scepter. Increased humidity, salinization of the soil, and chiefly the accumulation of sewage at the location where the Sphinx is located, which is not subject to any kind of cleaning, has served as the reason for this. Usually they make reference to modern industry, but unfortunately no one has performed a broad investigation to evaluate the influence of modern civilization on stone structures. It is fully possible that the structures are not as ancient as the Scaligerine chronology contends, and that they are being destroyed naturally at a natural rate. One of the modern methods which pretends to independent dating of historical monuments is the dendrochronological. Its idea is rather simple. It is based on the fact that tree rings, so we heard this before, the dendrochronological. So we're talking about tree rings in the trunks form unevenly throughout the years. It is thought that a plot of the thickness of the annual rings is approximately identical in trees of one species, which grows in the same places and conditions. In order for one to use such a method for dating, one needs at first to build a reference plot of the thickness of the annual rings of the given species of trees over a sufficiently lengthy historical period. We can call such a plot a dendrochronological scale. If such a scale were built, then with its aid one can date several archaeological discoveries which contain pieces of lumber. One needs to determine the species of the tree, drill out a narrow longitudinal tube of it, measure the thickness of the rings, compare it with the sequence of the ring sizes, and find on the reference scale a section showing the same timetable. At the same time, the question is supposed to be researched. Which deviations of the comparative plots may one ignore? Anything was likely to happen in the past. There were very cold years, there was little rain, or the other way around, it rained without letting up. Therefore, the rings also turned up at various thicknesses, and in general, it is difficult to study the wood of hardwoods. Its indistinct rings tell us very little about the past. Good quality archaeological material, contrary to expectations, have been found to be insufficient. And another thing, the dendrochronological scale in Europe are drawn downwards only by several centuries. You see ancient trees in European forests number only 300 to 400 years of age. Thus, it is not possible to date ancient structures. Not possible. Past these dates, the American dendrochronology is in the best condition. The Douglas fir, the mountain and yellow pine, but this region is far from Europe. In 1994, a special conference on this problem was held at an American professor, Peter N. Kunahold, reported about the modern condition of dendrochronology and argued that not one of the methods can give a clear and uninterrupted picture of datings from our time further back than the 10th century AD. We're back there. We're back to the 900s. That is, they are suitable only for 1,000 years, in which connection, even in this case, they are doubtful inasmuch as they are tied to the time axis only on the basis of the Coleraine chronology. So it's another chronology. We got the Scaliger, you got the Coleraine. Now we're dealing with the flamenco. Nonetheless, some individuals' beams were dated with this technique. For example, one of the beams from Pharaoh's tomb. At the same time, they were dependent upon the traditional chronology and attributed to the era this required. Finding other beams later, the chronologists correlated these to the beams that had already been dated. Sometimes this worked, sometimes it turned out well. As a result, a segment of the dendrochronological scale emerged around the original dating. The relative dating of various discoveries within this segment, it is possible, is correct. However, their absolute dating, that is, tying all the segments to the time axis, is mistaken because the first dating made according to Scaligerian chronology is uncertain. Scaliger's historical chronology has naturally been extended into other scales used to determine the age of various other objects. Let's get a few more pages. So there are numerous attempts to determine absolute age according to the rate of sediment accumulation. They turned out to be unsuccessful. So these are all the other ways of dating things. All right. So studies were held simultaneously in many countries, but the results, contrary to expectations, turned out to be distressing. It became obvious that even identical species in similar natural conditions can flourish and vanish again with the most inexplicable speed, making it almost impossible to establish any kind of precise measurement using these processes. For example, from ancient written sources, it is believed that the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II reigned nearly 3,000 years ago. The buildings which were erected during this time are now buried under a 3-meter thickness of sand. This drifting works out to approximately 1 meter layer of sand accumulating in a millennium. At the same time, only 3 centimeters of sediment were deposited in some areas of Europe in 1,000 years. But at the same time, in the mouths of the estuaries in the south of Ukraine, the same quantity of sediment is deposited annually. They also tried to develop other methods. The radium, uranium, radioactive methods work within the limits of 300,000 years. They are convenient for dating of geological formations in those cases when the required precision does not exceed 4,000 to 10,000 years. For purposes of historical chronology, these methods for the time being are unfortunately unable to give any practical help. To all the radiocarbon dating, we're talking about uranium, radium, radioactive methods. The most widely used in the radiocarbon method is the radiocarbon method, which alleges the capacity to date ancient organic materials within a small margin of error. However, very serious difficulties in the use of this method have come to light, which require a re-evaluation of it. The radiation that penetrates the atmosphere varies for many reasons. Hence, the quantity of the radioactive isotope of carbon C14 that is formed must fluctuate over time. That fluctuation is a no-no in methodology. It is necessary at a minimum to find a method which would take this into account. Moreover, a huge quantity of carbon which is creating owing to the combustion of wood, coal, oil, peat, shell oils, and the products of their processing is expelled continuously into the atmosphere. Which kind of influence does this source of atmospheric carbon have on the increase of the radioactive isotope content? No one knows, and if they don't know it, it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna be true. Not to the methodology. In order to determine the true age, one has to establish complex adjustments which reflect the change in the atmosphere's composition over the last millennium. These ambiguities, along with some difficulties of the technical nature, have caused doubts about the precision of many findings that were carried out by the carbon method. The originator of the method is William F. Libby. He was absolutely convinced at the accuracy of Scalagerian datings and absolutely relied upon these in his work. However, the archaeologist Vladimir Molinářský has convincingly shown that this method yields chaotic errors of up to 1,000 to 2,000 years. So how's that for an error to be 2,000 years off? And its own independent dating of ancient specimens is lavishly followed the dating proposed by historians, and therefore it is impossible to say that it confirms it. William F. Libby wrote, here's a quote, "We have no disagreement with historians relative to ancient Rome and ancient Egypt. We have not carried out numerous evaluations for this epoch, since its chronology is known to archaeology better than we were able to establish it in placing at our disposal specimens, which, by the way, are burnt in the process of radiocarbon measurement. The archaeologists rather have rendered us a service." The acknowledgement of Libby is significant inasmuch as the difficulties of the Scalagerian chronology were most particularly noticed in those very regions and epochs for which numerous evaluations were not carried out. With those, every control measurement which nonetheless was carried out, the situation is thus with radiocarbon dating, for example, of James Henry Breasted collection in Egypt. Suddenly it was discovered, William Libby reports, that the third object which we had subjected to analysis was found to be modern. This was a severe blow. Nevertheless, a way out was found then and there. They declared the object a forgery, inasmuch as no one doubted the correctness of the Scalagerian chronology of ancient Egypt. So they just said it's a forgery instead of saying it's a chronology issue. There are no broad controlling statistics. Instead, there are dictates by historians who supposedly know best what happened and when. Nevertheless, even the historians aren't always convinced of their computations. William F. Libby wrote again, "We have not become aware of the deficiency in the materials of the epoch which is 3,700 years away from us, for which one will be able to check the precision and reliability of the method. The historians who are acquainted with me are ready to vouch for the precision within the bounds of the last 3,750 years. However, when it is a question of more ancient events, their confidence vanishes. They can't tell you who you are. How can they tell you who you're not?" In other words, the radiocarbon method was used widely there where the results received are difficult to check by other independent methods. Some archaeologists, while not doubting the scientific principles of the radiocarbon method, have proposed that in the method itself is hidden the possibility of significant errors which are caused by yet unknown effects. But perhaps these errors are small anyhow and do not prevent, for instance, a coarse dating in an interval of 2,000 to 3,000 years downward from our time. However, it turns out that the situation is more serious. The errors are too great and chaotic. They can reach a magnitude of 1,000 to 2,000 years with the dating of objects of our time and the Middle Ages. In 1984, the discussion developed at two symposia in Edinburgh and Stockholm around the radiocarbon method. In Edinburgh, examples of hundreds of analyses were cited in which errors of datings ranged in a region from 600 to 1,800 years. In Stockholm, the scientists complained that the radiocarbon method for some reason distorts the history of ancient Egypt and the epoch which is believed to be 4,000 years away from us. There also are other cases, for example, in the history of the Balkan civilizations. Specialists have declared unanimously that the radiocarbon method has been doubted up to now because it is incapable of independent collaboration. Without this, it is unacceptable, since there is no independent indication that it yields accurate dates on the calendar scale. Radiocarbon dates have introduced, as L.S. Klein writes, confusion. And who's the author of it? Confusion in a number of archaeologists, some with characteristic admiration, accepted the instructions of the physicists. These archaeologists hurried to rebuild the chronological layouts. Vladimir Molenchik is the first archaeologist to come out against the radiocarbon method, who has not only assailed the practical use of radiocarbon dating, but also savagely criticized the theoretical suppositions of the physical method itself, while comparing individual measurements of modern specimens with an average figure, a standard. Molenchik substantiates his skepticism with a series of glaring paradoxes. And we're just talking about the true chronology, and we're talking about the dates. And we're talking about the times, and we're talking about the laws, and what's been put on you, and what's been put on me when we get into this radiocarbon dating. And it goes deep, man, deeper into it. So, I'm just leading you to the water. There's more to this chapter. Man. There's more to this chapter that I wish I had time to get. I'm just trying to do a little belly flop to see if I can just jump into something else. Let's check this out. The history of Eurasia up to the 16th century, as it were, has been cobbled together with several reiterated original medieval chronicles, which have been shifted in both time and space relative to each other. Adherents of the new chronology have been able, with a high degree of reliability, to single out 3 time shifts. Again, 3 time shifts, listen up, in the past of the original European chronicles. The ancient Greek, it really is ancient European. So the ancient Greek, it really is ancient European. Shift amounts to approximately 1,800 years. When they say time shift, they're saying the same thing that you're reading about is happening in ancient Greece is actually happening in ancient Europe. And they shifted those things 1,800 years apart, but they're really the same damn story of the same damn empire. That is, events of the 14th century are attributed to more than 1,000 years ago. Events of the 14th century, who was Prester John, are attributed to more than 1,000 years ago. So you got a time shift of 1,800 years, a time shift of 1,000 years, or 10,053, right? 10,054, right? The all-European Christian or Roman shift displaced 10,050 years. Another historian came on and left a comment that they shifted things 1,000 years, so they at least added 1,000 years to these stuff, man. That is, the birth of this Christos, their hijack, was closer to 1,000 years ago than 2,000 years ago. And finally, the Byzantine shift of 300 years. Byzantine, Mazaka, Mosak, Mashika. The imaginary transfer of the capital of the Roman Empire to Constantinople is one example of this. The main result of the work of Anatoly Fomenko and his colleagues is the creation of a global chronological chart. An original conception of the reconstruction of worldwide history has been developed based on it. In recent times, it has been found support and confirmation in the works of the Bulgarian professor Jordan Tabal, German professors Heribert Illig and Gunnar Hietson, French historian Robert Caratini, and others. So all these researchers are digging on this, and this is not what you're being taught in school, is it? But they're digging on this internationally. At the same time, the French linguist Émilie Beneviste developed a strictly scientific world idea thing method, which allowed him to argue the uniformity of the process of the development of the linguistic and social cultures of all the Eurasian geographic space in a time interval of approximately 2,500 years. Settling on these and other works, adherents of the new chronology Igor Davydenko and Yaroslav Kessler came to the conclusion that modern civilization, from the primitive in the 9th century to the blooming in the 15th century, developed consecutively as a single whole. Whoa, so he's saying everything from the 9th century to the 15th century happened consecutively at the same damn time. From the 16th century, when thanks to the growth of manufacturing, a significant surplus of the product appeared and market relationships began to form, the man-caused schism of mankind. Whoa, which continues even though today was begun with the formation of nations and national states. All right. The pre-Christian period moved by the traditional chronology deep into the centuries. In fact, is separated from us by some 800 to 900 years. This was not that long ago. Indeed, from it all, our achievements of today derive. This era was the foundation of our material and cultural existence. The time called by the adherents of the traditional chronology the Dark Ages, the centuries of barbarism, that is, the outburst of savagery and wildness after the supposedly golden age of a concocted antiquity, is in fact a time of a slow, advancing movement forward, of an accumulation of knowledge, of experience, and of mankind's painful but fruitful spiritual quest. Woo! Then we're going to go into the legends of ancient Greece and see what's really there. What's really there? We just talking for the manco, man. We just talking for the manco. As we have said in the preface, the creation of the Middle Ages of chronology used today in historiography did not result from some whim on the part of lovers of antiquity who had emerged. This is a point of primary importance which must be clearly understood, otherwise it will be difficult to understand what happened to the history, for example, of Europe and the accounts of it produced by Scaliger and his followers. Man, then we're going to get to another chronology. And like I said, man, this chapter, man, I'm going to get to next is that Mongol yoke in Russia, man. We got to get that Mongol yoke in Russia. 181, I mean, I'm not going to get too many, but I just want to check out a couple of them, you know what I'm saying? 181. Oh, man, they got Muhammad over here. Oh, man. Love to Miss D, the Cop Got Awakening. You got the link below, my sister. Everyone got it, man. Drop on it, dig on it, man. I see them getting to Nestorianism. We're getting right into that Press of John again, so this is right on time to bring our timelines back. Talking about Tartaria, I just see all these things popping up, and it's like just big old, you know, I don't know, man. Just exciting times, man. I just get excited. I just see this. It's like a kid in the candy store, man. The Mongol yoke in Russia. Russia's history is directly involved with those investigations which concern the nomads. All right, so we're going to go into how these Khans, all right, and how they've been labeled as these Mongol nomads, but this is only called the medieval empire of the Israelites, and we're talking about the Wan Khans and the Carrots. Russia's history, the timelines, Rus, Clan Ross. We're getting into all that. Russia's history is directly involved with those investigations which concern the nomads, which we examined in the previous chapter. We shall touch here on a few pages for this history, for the basic methods of falsifying the past in service of the political interests of ruling dynasties are neatly exemplified in them. These same techniques are found without exception in the histories of all Eurasian countries. The Mongolian version was widely propagated in Russia. So they're saying this Mongolian history really went down in Russia. Russian historians were not able to speak in this about the savage tribes as they did about their own kinfolk. And this, if they did, it would turn out that Russia is not a European country, but Asia. And this had a negative connotation to the Europe of the 18th, 19th centuries. It suggested something hopelessly outdated, arrested in its development. Russians did not want very much to have such incongenial forefathers. This being the case, a slender and at first glance extremely convincing version of the birth and development of the Russian state was constructed. It was made up which involved the dramatic participation of both her western and eastern neighbors. So it was a confederacy that said, yes, let's construct this Russian history here. With the respect to this, if the West brought to the forefathers of the Russians the light of knowledge and a desired order, then the East supplied nothing to them but difficulties. In other words, the Scaliger-Batavia scheme, which had been contrived for Europe, was adopted, but with one difference. They called themselves Slavs rather than Romans. So now they're just changing the titles, but they're keeping the same story. They call themselves Slavs, but not Romans. And the bad fellows, the narrow-eyed and wide-cheekboned horsemen with bows and arrows who did not know how to either read or write or think, could only shoot, kill, fill their bellies with half-naked horse flesh. I mean, the Mongols, that's how they, this author's showing how they painted this story, right? They find the beginning of this version of medieval manuscripts, that is, in the most ancient of written sources for Rus. Like I said, we're getting back into the Rus, the Ross, and they're talking about you. Thus are called variously Radziwill, Laurentinian, Impative, Trinity, Saint, Sergei. They named these after the monasteries in which they were found. So these manuscripts were called after these hijacked monasteries that they were found in after they were written. It is considered that some of them are older than others, the less so. Some supposedly are originals, while others have reached us in copies because the originals were burnt, were lost, were stolen, were buried, in short, disappeared once and for all. In other words, we have here the same pattern that we have already seen in the various other forgeries and falsifications which form the basis of European history. Man, we're just getting a little intro, man, into this Mongol talk, man. And I know it's going right in a direction, that we've been digging on with our Prester John series, our Cities of Gold. I mean, all this stuff plays, man, when we really start digging on these Kievs and these Ruses and this state of Rus. There's a lot of great manuscripts to dig on when we talk about Moscow and all the Rus. Moscow Moses, Moscow Moses. Moscow Moses, Mongols in Russia, Rus. Alright, I'm just checking it out, man. Don't mind me. In 1206, Genghis Khan conquered North China and turned his hordes westward. He subdued Turkestan, invaded Persia. Alright. Let's give it a timeline of some stuff that happened now. 1238 was the capture of Kiev. Okay. The main mass, that is, Slavs, played practically the main role, all of these Rus and the other heretics. So, we're going to dig on it, but it appears that we're going to go into just pretty much how these Ruses were the so-called Mongols, and it was happening as these Rus, these Israelite kingdoms, these, Kariots, these Mongol Khans, these Americans, these more on more. Khan just means priest, king, ruler. Oh man. The Cossacks. All right. I'm gonna stop doing this to myself. But you see, I'm very excited, man. So love to the System HD for dropping this off on us, man. So let's just get this. A fantastic picture that has nothing in common with reality. The frequent mutual marriages, as Anatoly Fomenko emphasizes, deliberately refer to the community of religion and the intimacy of culture. So all these Khazars and Mongols were not savage nomads, as they're painting them to be. They manifested touching concern not only for the spiritual health of all subjected Russia, but for what they're calling Christianity, which we know they call Nestorian. Nestor, old king renowned for wise counsel. As a whole, for example, the Russian system of communication, which existed before the end of the 9th century, was all introduced by the Mongols. Their whole system of communication was introduced by these so-called Mongols. That's why it's in quotation marks, including the coachmen. All right, well known to everyone. So Anatoly Flamenco reconstruction of the world. So even the name Yam Shishk, coachman, is of Turkic origin. All right, so that was from Roman roots. That's another manuscript we got to get. So as you see, man, it's just going to keep leading us to more drop, man, more drop. It's hard to get away from it. We're going to make our dismount, man. What we going to do, man? What y'all want to do? Y'all want to get into, a little bit of this Grim Nasty TV.
Surprise for you today.
A little bit of these tree stumps, man. Love to y'all. We're just vibing out. Check this out.
Trees. We all know that
mountains were trees. We're talking about a time and a period where these trees were silicon. They were crystal. They weren't carbon-based. They were crystal-based. And what happens when your tree stumps grow? What happens when your oxygen comes back? What happens to you? Let go.
We all know that these are giant tree stumps now, and everyone's kind of like, what the hell? As you can tell that these are been burned up and blown up, stripped away. These hexagonal shapes. And in my hand I hold a big chunk of one of these silicon trees. Now, a lot of these people retrieve these types of crystals at crystal dig sites where these trees have been blown apart, and you will literally find chunks of the silica in the earth. And they're all like different colors, kind of like the petrified forest, like you can see here. So these are literally be branches of these silica trees, chopped in slabs and laid into a giant quarry waste site, and then they called it petrified forest. It's like fucking crazy. Everything just, blown up pretty much, burned up and blown up to nothing, to make way for civilization, highways, and corporations like the United States.
Crystal trees, crystal you.
But still interesting to see what it looks like in the inside. And these trees would be everywhere, but the main one you want to get to is exactly where the mass source where the arrow is coming from. They tell you the arrow always points away, but the source is where the arrow is coming from. So you can clearly see there's a hole. And interestingly enough, where the south is, they're giving us a black sun there. It's so weird that they would do that. I mean, why not just fill it in with the white dots like the east and the west? Why has it got to be the black? Huh. Northern lights shooting out of the hole. See? What the hell? So yeah, this, get your compass ready, because this trip's going to be coming up real soon. So I suggest everyone, get familiar with your surroundings and learn what these crystals really are. Because everything was a silica landmass, silica tree stumps, silica-based life forms. You got a silica firmament that's kind of like more like the silica that's in your teeth, in your bones. They fuse back together, they grow back. And that's kind of like what I would kind of compare it to. More like your bones inside of your body, a living giant organism that fuses itself back together. So these things are all living and they can grow. And it's crazy to think. Isn't that just the weirdest thing ever? Even blown apart and breaking apart in a hexagonal shape.
Wow.
Fucking crazy.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. So, yeah. There's also ways that apparently you can put magnets with these and put them in water and it charges them.
Crazy,
or it charges the
man.
water. I'm going to do an experiment with that. Somebody is giving me some information on that.
Man, y'all dig on a little bit more of that, man. We just getting, talking about our trees, man. We're going to do a double dismount, man. Only we can do a double dismount like this. Love to y'all, man. Let's check out this weather balloon. Almost touches the sun. Love to Georgia Doctor. And you tell me, is the sun 93 million miles away? Okay, so what's that? This balloon is so close, you know what I mean, to this portal, to this energy, some, you know, whatever you want to call it. Is this 93 million miles away? Use your senses. Would it be blowing up and shining in this one area from 96, 93 million miles? Is this 93 million miles? Look at it. It's not over here. It's not over there. It's in this one spot, making hot spots on top of the earth, underneath the barrier. Is this over the barrier or under the barrier? Quick. Over or under? Over or under? Yeah. Flat. Let go. At the end of the day, you do your research, you do your recon, you stay up, you suit up, and remember, man, choose up at all time, man. Keep digging on the library, keep digging on the drop. Just know that we love you no matter what is going on in the world, that we got our order, that we got our unity, and that it is all for you. It is all for the Creator. It is all our existence. It is all our Hawa. Suit up.